Good afternoon.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Good afternoon.
Hi. How are you?
Fine. How are you all?
I'm fine, thank you.
So we're just waiting for more people to connect, just giving some minutes, and we will start. Okay, excellent. So good morning and good afternoon, depending on from where you are connecting. We're very glad to have you here with us, to all those that are participants in the workshop, but also to all those that are following us in the streaming, because the plenary sessions of this workshop will be streamed live in YouTube. My name is Maria de la Puente, for those that have not met me in any other occasion, and I work for EuFMD. I'm a vet, mainly responsible for coordinating activities related to training and emergency preparedness. So as you know, following our 4 live sessions of the virtual open session that we held in December, we have organized several virtual workshops. And this workshop in particular is on EuFMDiS, or European Disease Spread Model. And I think this session links very well with the live sessions we had in December on vaccine security, that was session 3, and also on the importance of emergency preparedness, that was session 4. So for those that are part of the workshop, you have received all the information on the agenda and how the breakout rooms will be organized, but we will discuss about that a bit later. And I invite you to introduce yourselves in the chat box, because for many of you, we already see the name and surname, but just in case we don't have it in all cases, this will help us to break up the rooms. So if you can kindly use the chat box just to say, hi, I am Maria de la Puente, for example, from Spain, and then we can all know who we are. And then from our side, presenting today, we will have Koen Mintiens and Shankar Jadab from EuFMD, but also we will have our special guests, Tatiana and Victoria, who are EuFMDiS users and will be also sharing this event with us, being trainers of the model. So with that, thanks again for joining, and I give the floor to Koen. Over to you, Koen.
Thank you, Maria. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I'm not sure where you are. Welcome to this workshop. My name is Koen Mintiens. I'm a veterinary epidemiologist. I'm working for EuFMD as a risk assessor. And I'm going to give an introduction to the tool and to the workshop of today. I will start with sharing my screen. Maria, can you confirm?
All good, Koen.
Okay, thanks. So, yes, so the first 30 minutes, I'm going to give you an outline on what EuFMDiS is and how it contributes to this workshop. So let's start with the objectives of the workshop, repeating them. So at first, we want to give a demonstration on the EuFMDiS model as a decision support tool for contingency planners. And then as an exercise with EuFMD, but also to show that EuFMDiS can actually support contingency planners. We're going to compare different vaccination strategies in a multi-country outbreak of foot and mouth disease, and to see what would be the most effective vaccination strategy. We will look at several vaccination strategies, and with that, estimate the number of vaccine doses that would be needed to control the outbreaks. So let me give you first an outline on the EuFMDiS model. So EuFMDiS is the European Foot and Mouth Disease Spread Model. It's a simulation model that can simulate foot and mouth disease outbreaks and is a tool for decision makers on issues that need to be addressed in terms of contingency planning and preparedness testing. So the model does look at what can be the potential size and the impact of disease outbreaks, which control strategies would be optimal, so by comparison. And we also look in terms of control strategies, we don't only look at the efficiency of control strategies, but also what resources are available, are put available in contingency plans by decision makers to do the control. I hear some background noise, so may I ask you to switch all your microphones off, have them muted, thank you. So, and with that, we want to come to a better understanding of the potential risks that may exist during the control of disease outbreaks. With that, the model has a high value for EU-wide or Europe-wide contingency planning. So the model is consistent with the current EU foot and mouth disease directives and will be consistent with the new animal health law. And all the control measures that are in this directive can be individually be switched off and on to estimate the impact on the control. It's a multi-country spread model, so the disease can spread over borders, and that's what you will see in the exercise. And as I mentioned, the success of control measure is not only considered in terms of effectiveness of the measure, but also in terms of available resources to do the control. And by simulating the outbreaks, we can estimate the impact of the control measures in terms of outbreak outcomes, in terms like, for example, duration of outbreaks, resources needed, scale of vaccines that are needed, and also look at costs and economic impact of an outbreak. The model is based actually on the Australian animal disease model, the EuFMDiS model. And EuFMDiS has been developed with the funding of the Australian government. It is a sophisticated disease modeling platform, so it's not only used for foot and mouth disease, but can also be used for other diseases, as it is done in Australia at the moment. Also for plant diseases, for pests, plant pests, even for insects, all these kind of risks and then epidemics that can come over a country can be assessed through that. It has a hybrid modeling approach, and I don't want to go into too technical details, but it combines equation-based modeling with agent-based modeling. And having said that, the outcome is that it's a very fast model, and that's very nice. So you will see later on, iterations and simulations are processing very, very fast, and that may be different to other existing models, and that's why it's so appealing for us and for decision makers to be used. So EuFMD and the Australian Department of Agriculture and Water Resources have formalized the collaboration, which makes that EuFMD can use the model royalty-free. And this is really very nice to us because it's really low-cost developments that we can do and makes it also very, very easily available for our member states. Let me give a few words about the components in the model. So I will say some few words about the different regions we consider, the herds and the herd types, the different disease transmission routes, the different control measures that are considered. We are also giving some specific emphasis on costs and economic impacts. And then I'll say a few words about how reporting outputs can be reported out of the results of the simulations. So at first, the model identifies regions, which is maybe particular because we're not following admin regions here. We are following regions within a country which have similar characteristics in terms of livestock production and also disease transmission. You see a map here from the 7 pilot countries where the model was developed at first. You would see, for example, that Italy would have 4 different regions. And those regions are not the admin borders of the different administrative regions in Italy, but are more linked to characteristics in terms of livestock production and disease transmission. For example, if you would see the northern Italy region 1, has a very densely populated livestock, areas with a lot of poultry, pigs, and cattle, which makes disease transmission appear and occur in a different way than, for example, going to the south of Italy, where there's very little cattle, there's very little pig, but there's a lot of small ruminants, and then in addition to that, there's also a lot of buffalo, and it's more extensive farming, sparsely populated region, and therefore the characteristics in terms of disease transmissions may be different. And we asked the countries, the participating countries, to identify those regions by themselves. So you may find that a country has many regions or less regions, and that's really based on the characteristics and the input and the expertise that the countries provide. So we use those regions to give specific characteristics to disease transmission between the regions. So a herd in one region would, all pig herds in one region would have the same characteristics, similar characteristics compared to pig herds in another region. And this is why we use this for the model. Then the next is to go to the herds and the herd types. So we identify herds as the epidemiological unit. So transmission between, disease transmission is modeled within and between the herds. There may be different herds in one farm. So you may have a pig herd and a cattle herd in one farm. So at farm level, we will do the control measures, but at transmission level, we will use the herds as epidemiological units. And that's why these herds have attributes. So for each herd in a country, we have to know what type of herd it is, the size, the location, and a few other characteristics. So, and this is a table we ask from the countries to provide. And we have also specified different herd types, which are common for all countries. And these herd types are specified based on the species which are present and also production, management, and trade characteristics. For example, well, you see the table here with the listed the 9 different herd types we consider in the model. So we have cattle herds, we have buffalo herds, small ruminant herds, pig herds, and the mixed backyard herds. And within the cattle herds and the pig herds, we still have different types, like in the cattle herds, commercial dairy farms, commercial beef farms, and then the small commercial cattle farms, which are more a mixture type of farm. And we ask countries also to allocate to each herd in the country to one of these herd types. Also for us to make the model more possible. The map you see at the back actually are the dots of all the herds which are now in the model. And the color is based on the herd types, the 9 herd types. So you can see that it's a nice picture where you can see that all the herds that have been that are considered in the model, again in the 7 pilot countries in the EuFMDiS environment.
Can I ask a question?
Maybe we can wait with questions until the end. That's okay. Let me say a few things about the disease transmission routes. So, as I mentioned, it is a multi-country model. So it considers transmission within countries, within country, and between countries. So within countries, we consider different detailed transmission pathways. We consider direct contact spread, indirect contact spread, local spread, airborne spread, and spread through assembly centers and markets. And these spread mechanisms have been specifically parameterized in the model for foot-and-mouth disease. We can also sometimes rely on simplified jump diffusion spread, so meaning less accurate parameterized model spread, disease spread. But these different transmission pathways can actually even be switched on and off in the model to see what would be the impact. If we look at between country spread, then spread of foot-and-mouth disease will occur through animal movements. Again, airborne spread of neighboring herds across the border, also local spread across the border, and then specifically here is also spread through assembly centers, because transport from animals from one country to another will by default go through these assembly centers, and they may play an important role in the spread of foot-and-mouth disease. On the graph you will see, I hope you can see it properly, in a outbreak, actually the outbreak we will look at later on today, you see that the arrows, the different arrows show spread from one herd to another, and the different color legend, the colors to it show the way the spread occurred. So from here inside you can see that there's a lot of indirect spread, direct spread, local spread. The blue ones you can't see it so well, but then there's also, as I mentioned, spread through assembly centers from one country to the other, namely from Austria to Italy in this brown arrows. So all these different spread pathways are considered in the model and are given a certain probability to occur. Then talking about the control pathways, then the control measures. So as I mentioned, all the control measures that are listed in the EU directive are available in the model and can be switched on and off. So you can see different pop-up windows here where these different control pathways can be fine-tuned on the different options. The options are, well, numerous. So you look at the way the first infected herd was detected can be altered, so the detection delay can be altered. We will include the operations on, the model includes the operations on infected premises, so cleaning and disinfection, culling of animals. The model also includes the movement restrictions, the different restriction zones. Contact tracing is included. Disease surveillance activities as prescribed by the EU directive are included in the model. Also, the fact that farmers can report suspected infections on the premises, that's included as an activity and control measure which has to be considered. The model also considers, includes preventive culling in different areas, different options, for example, ring culling or culling of contact herds. Different vaccination options are there, preventive and protective vaccinations, suppressive vaccinations are all in the model. And then we also consider post-outbreak management options, so the activities that are considered to be conducted after the outbreaks have been, well, no, the outbreak is under control and no new infected herds are appearing. Again, for all the control measures, we are considering the effectiveness of the measure itself, but also, again, the resources for control that are provided by countries to deal with the activities. And as I mentioned, and we will show it while we're going into the breakout rooms, here are the different dialog boxes, the dialog windows that can be consulted to change different options which are needed or which are preferred when running the scenarios in the model. But we can come back to that in detail when we show the model in more detail and as it is running in the breakout rooms. Then, as I mentioned, we will also look, well, the model also looks at costs and economic impacts. So the idea is to compare costs of different control strategies, and we want to keep this simple. We will not go into full economic modeling, but there's a number of parameters we want to consider when comparing these costs related to control strategies. So we will look at animal values for compensation, costs, operational costs of outbreak management, trade losses, and then also the post-outbreak management costs. So these are all the different parameters that are considered by the model. Again, so we want to look at relative differences between control strategies, so it's not a full economic assessment, but just adequate for comparing different policies. Then, as the simulation is ongoing, and after the iterations have been completed, there are a number of CSV files produced, which can be opened by, for example, Excel or other statistical software, in which the data which come out of the model are listed. So data about the outbreak specifications per run, the dynamics of the disease in herds, also transmission routes which have been implemented, have been followed, or occurred, the data related to the different premises, how many premises were infected, were vaccinated, animals were culled, and so on. Also the control measures data, how many animals have been vaccinated per run, and so on. And then finally, we also have a CSV file reporting on the costs. So look at cost and economic impact of the outbreaks through the different rounds, the different iterations of the model. And this is easily transferable into Excel, as I said, or can be used in a proper statistical software to do to use statistical inference to actually look at differences between the scenarios. Also important to mention is that we have, with the model, it's not just a model, we also have the EuFMDiS users group. So these are all countries that are using the model are included into this group. And we meet normally, if all goes well, at least once per year face-to-face. And we have regular webinars with each other to help each other, well, from our side, EuFMD to help them with the studies they're conducting, but also from their side, receive their requirements to see we can meet their requirements with the model. We're also providing proficiency training, and we're also looking at a code of conduct. So as we are using data from different countries within one modeling environment, we have, of course, to be careful with the disclosure of these data in reports and publications. And that's why we have also this code of conduct within the users group. We're not stopping with development. So the development is ongoing. We want to scale up EuFMDiS to a Europe-wide model. I showed you the graph earlier. So we have 9 countries which are actually in which the country is fully developed. We are developing the model in an additional number of countries, but we want to scale this up to a European-wide model to actually allow a full assessment of the impact of outbreaks in the whole of Europe when possible. We're also developing additional components to the model. For example, we were looking, as you can see on the pictures here, interaction between wild boar and domestic pigs. The wild boar here are the purple dots. This is a pig herd, to see how there's an interaction between wildlife and domestic pigs and domestic animals in transmission of diseases. Maybe not so much in related to foot and mouth disease, but we are looking at other diseases like classical swine fever, maybe African swine fever or others. We also want to extend the model from foot and mouth disease to other diseases. As I mentioned, classical swine fever, African swine fever, but also lumpy skin disease. And last but not least, we are also developing training on good modeling practices where the users can be certified to have sufficient proficiency in using the model and actually provide sustainable output. So this was a very short introduction to EuFMDiS. We will go more into details during the workshop. Let me first say a few words about the workshop before we maybe have some questions. Let me update on what is the scenario like. So this is the snapshot of the start of the modeling scenario, as you see on the graph. So what happens is that in a commercial breeding pig herd in North Austria, foot-and-mouth disease is introduced in August 2017. And this infection is only detected after 21 days. Is detected after 21 days. And so that's a time when the model will start running. So we have created a scenario where there was spread before those 21 days. And we want to have the scenario, we introduced that scenario to have some measure of comparison. So in the proposed scenario, infection after 21 days resulted in 71 infected herds, and with spread to Italy and Slovenia, as you see on the map here. So this is Austria, which is the center of the outbreak, but through these assembly centers, there has been spread to Slovenia and to Italy of the infection, and this is where we are. So the infection is originally infected. The infection is detected 1 day later. So the next day in the model, the first infected herd will be detected and confirmed. And this is where we start with the different control options, the different vaccination strategies, and this is how they look like. So we have 4 strategies we want to compare. The first strategy is suppressive vaccination within a 3-kilometer radius around infected herds, but only cattle herds and cattle are vaccinated. And the other scenario, it will also be a suppressive vaccination with a 3-kilometer radius, but there we consider a vaccination of all species simultaneously. In the third strategy, this vaccination radius is extended to 5 kilometers and also with a vaccination of all species. And then in the fourth strategy, we see that each country applies a different vaccination strategy, and that is Austria decides not to vaccinate. Italy will use suppressive vaccination within a 3-kilometer radius of all species, and Slovenia decides to use suppressive vaccination within a 3-kilometer radius where only cattle again are vaccinated. So these are the 4 scenarios which will be considered in the 4 breakout rooms, which we go into after a few minutes. And so the results which will come out for comparison are these. So we will look at the duration of an epidemic per run, the number of infected holdings, the number of vaccinated holdings, the number of vaccinated animals, the number of culled animals, and the vaccine doses that are required to conduct the vaccination, and then finally also the total cost of the outbreak. So this is the work we're going to head for just now. This is my last slide. So the breakout rooms have been pre-decided. You will be directed straight into them just now. But before moving forward, maybe there's a few minutes to take some questions. So please raise your hand if you have a question. Otherwise, yeah, that would be best for now. So raise your hand in the participants box, and I can see whether there's a question for now. Or you may raise your hand on the screen if you want, but that's not so easy for me to follow.
I think Michelle had a question before.
Yes, but it's okay. He answered already. Thank you.
Thank you. So Manuel Sanchez, you have a question?
Yes, hello, thank you. Thanks for the introduction. I have a question about the within country regions. So to define those regions, it's only taking into account the characteristics of the livestock farms, or also the movements within the area and between the areas.
Yeah, so you're correct. It's not only just the characteristics of the farm, but also looking at the intensity of contacts between the farms, either between well, direct contacts or indirect contacts, more especially the indirect contacts, because the direct contacts are very often available from the animal databases.
And how that is modeled within this tool, how that is region input is used in the modeling, because I understand that the epidemiology unit you are considered farm, no? So you are modeling the transmission between farms. So what is the role of the region?
Well, there's the region characteristics will have a weight on the probability of infection.
Okay.
So we start from a standard probability, but so the relative differences between the regions are considered as weights in the probability of transmission in the model.
Okay, thanks.
I see nothing else appearing, so we still have time at the end of the workshop to discuss more details about the model. We'll have some more. I recognize that this went pretty fast, but you will have more time after the breakout rooms to ask questions. So you will be assigned to the breakout rooms automatically, so there's nothing you should do. I rely on Tiziana to do so. And after we've been into the breakouts, we will also come automatically back to the main plenary room to discuss the results of our exercise. So that's all for me for now. So Maria, unless there's anything else I've missed, I
Nothing.
think we should go.
See you later.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, Tiziana, we're ready. See you later. Okay. I suppose everybody's here. Welcome back. It's been all very smoothly. So I hope you managed to finalize some runs in the model. And now I give the floor to Shankar, who actually did more runs on the different scenarios and actually will manage to compare the different scenarios and will present the results now. So Shankar, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Kun. So, are you seeing my screen, Kun?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, and thank you, everyone. Thank you for participating in this workshop. The topic of this presentation is the assessment of impacts of suppressive vaccination strategy for the control of FMD in Central Europe. And just for a disclaimer or warning that this study has been done for the demo purpose only, and we are not going to extrapolate or use these findings for any decisions or the further use, but because for those purpose we need to have a very holistic. We need to take some consider more factors before in the study design. So this is for only for demo purpose, and all the information are for demo purpose only. The objective of this this study was to compare different vaccination strategies in a multi-country FMD spread in Europe in order to demonstrate how the model can be used to first identify the most effective strategy in the given scenario and to estimate the number of vaccine doses that would be needed. So as you already know that, and in Kun's presentation, so we have compared 4 different control strategies. So first, first one was suppressive vaccination in the 3-kilometer radius of infected herds, and in this case, we vaccinated cattle only. In second one, the suppressive vaccination was implemented in 3-kilometer radius of infected herds, but all susceptible animal species were vaccinated. In third one, the suppressive vaccination was implemented in 3-kilometer radius of infected herds, and all animal species were vaccinated. In fourth one, each country had separate vaccination strategy or control strategy. So in this one, there was no vaccination for Austria. In Italy, vaccination was implemented in 3-kilometer radius for all susceptible species. And in Slovenia, the vaccination was implemented in 3-kilometer radius of infected herds, but only cattle were vaccinated. But the rest of the model parameters were common in all of these while we ran all of these control strategies. For example, in all of these control strategies, all the infected herds were called, and the rest of the parameters were also same. So to compare these control measures or vaccination strategies, we use the regional model, which included 4 countries: Italy, Austria, Slovenia, and Hungary. And the initial seeding of this outbreak was done using a snapshot. I think you all are now aware about this snapshot technique. I hope everyone had better insight how this snapshot were generated and how it works in the EuFMDiS. So actually, a snapshot represents the situation of the outbreak before detection. So in our context, the snapshot we used were representing the multi-country spread of EuFMD, starting from Austria. It spread to Italy and then to Slovenia. By the time this was brought in attention to the authorities. So a snapshot provides a better idea how the outbreak could be large in case we are not going to detect in a timely manner. So I think I'm not going to much detail in this snapshot because we already discussed in the breakout rooms. In this study, we used 4 different spread mechanisms: a direct contact spread, indirect contact spread, local area spread, and spread through cellular market. We didn't enable the airborne spread; we just disabled it. So disease detection was on day 21+1. So we simulated the silent spread for 21 days, and we modeled detection on day 1 after the snapshot seeding. So it was 21+1 for 22, and it was done from a dairy herd because we wanted to fix a herd ID for the detection because we just want to standardize the control strategy, because if we don't indicate any herd ID, then the detection can occur from any places and then it affects the control measures. So we wanted to start the control measures from particular herd so that we can compare the outcomes more accurately. Vaccination was initiated on day 7 after detection in all 4 strategies. The outbreak was ended once the disease was controlled. So you may have seen in the EuFMDiS demo. So there are several. Actually, there are there are 3 ways in which we can end the outbreak. First, we can use a particular like the length of the time, like for example 100 days or 180 days or 365 days. We can indicate that, and the model stop the running simulation on that particular day. Next, we can stop the epidemic when first detection occurs, and in the third one, we can allow the model to complete the control and control programs, and then it automatically end the simulation. So we have different options. For this one, we choose to end once this was controlled because this option gives us opportunity to estimate epidemic duration. Then each scenario was simulated for 50 iterations. So since this was for demo purpose, we only simulated for 50 iterations. But for other purpose, like for publication purpose or for their use in the decisions or policies, we recommend to simulate at least 500 to 1,000 iterations, because at that level of iterations, it allows model to capture most of the stochasticity we have in the data, and it also gives more precise outcomes. So this is the snapshot we used for the seeding, and as you can see, this snapshot represents multi-country spread, like 3 countries involved in the outbreak. So it started from Austria, went to Italy, and then to Slovenia. So in this one, there were 76 seed herds. Out of them, 71 were infectious, and 5 were immune by the time by the end of the silent spread period. So results. So first, it's epidemic duration. So as I mentioned, epidemic duration was from onset of the epidemic to the control program, end of the control program by the model. So you can see we had 4 different control measures. Vaccination in 3 kilometer zone size, cattle only. Vaccination is 3 kilometer zone size, all species. Vaccination is 5 kilometer zone size, all species. And vaccination different control measures for different country. This is fourth one. So you can see that the epidemic duration was shortest when vaccination was conducted in 3 kilometer radius of in cattle only, whereas the epidemic duration was longest when a different control strategy was adopted by different countries. So between the 3 kilometer vaccination for all animal species versus 5 kilometer vaccination is 5 kilometer zone size for a species, you can see that wider vaccination in wider zone was not helpful in reducing the epidemic duration. You can see the median days of epidemic was higher when we used the vaccination, when we implemented vaccination in 5 kilometer radius compared to when we implemented vaccination in 3 kilometer radius. Comparing between 3 kilometer cattle only vaccination versus 3 kilometer all animal only vaccination, we can see that cattle only vaccination has remarkably shorter epidemic duration than all animal vaccinations, though zone size are same in both cases. The next one is the number of infected holdings. So like epidemic duration, you can see that the number of infected holdings is least when vaccination was conducted in 3 kilometer zone size in cattle only, but the infected holdings were large in number or highest in number when different control strategy was implemented in different countries. Between 3 kilometer all animal species vaccination versus 5 kilometer all animal species vaccination, you can see the median number of that line, median number of infected holdings was smaller in this 3 kilometer vaccination for all animal species versus compared to 5 kilometer vaccination for all animal species. So even in this one, we can see that vaccination in 3 kilometer radius for cattle only has a significantly low number of infected holdings, a smaller number of infected holdings compared to other vaccination strategies. Number of vaccinated holdings. So it was obvious that when we vaccinate in the bigger zone size, we may see that the number of vaccinated animals or the holdings will be higher. So when we vaccinated in 5 kilometer radius in all animal species, we had significantly high number of vaccinated holdings compared to 3 kilometer all species and 3 kilometer cattle only. You see that this one, the fourth scenario, which is different country, different vaccination, different control strategy. In this one, Austria, though it was impacted, highly impacted in this study or in this scenario, simulation, we didn't implement vaccination here. So there is the number of vaccinated holdings is quite low here, but we need to compare here because these three strategies we implemented vaccination. So it's very obvious that if we increase the zone size, we have more number of vaccinated holdings. And if we increase the number of other species, we have more number of holdings to be vaccinated. So in this case, we had only cattle, so the number of vaccinated holdings is quite significantly lower than other. So number of vaccinated animals. So you can see, and so the cattle were the highest number of vaccinated animal species, and most of the animal, the vaccinated holdings or vaccinated animals were in Austria because that was the mostly affected country in this study, followed by Italy and then Slovenia. Total number of called animals. So this total number of called animals involve both called due to infection and called due after vaccination. So when we had vaccination in 5 kilometer zone size and vaccinated all animal species, the number of called animals were significantly higher. It was around more than 800,000 if you see the 75th percentile If you see the maximum value, it's more than a million. So in this one also, we see that the number of total called animals were significantly lower when we vaccinated in 3 kilometer radius and vaccinated cattle only. So it sounds like the vaccinating cattle only looks like kind of uh, appropriate control strategy based on this data. So we see that now we have estimated how many vaccine doses we may need to control this kind of uh, scenarios, or disease to control the disease in this kind of scenarios. So when we use larger zone size like 5 kilometer, obviously we need more vaccine doses. So as you can see in this one, in the worst case scenario, we may need more than 800,000 vaccine doses if we vaccinate all animal species in 5 kilometer radius. Whereas when we vaccinate all animal species in 3 kilometer radius, in worst case scenario, we may need more than 600,000 vaccine doses. Whereas when we vaccinate cattle only, in worst case scenario, we may need vaccine lower than 200,000 doses. But one important thing that I want to note here, if you see this line, which is the median number of vaccine doses, it doesn't, this median number of vaccine doses is not much different between 3 kilometer cattle only vaccination and 3 kilometer all animal species vaccination. But in the worst case scenario, it is possible that when you have all animal vaccinated in 3 kilometer, we require significantly high number of vaccine doses than cattle only vaccination. The number of vaccine by country. So as we see, when we have 5 kilometer, obviously we need more vaccine doses. And in Austria, the maximum number of vaccine that was required for this 5 kilometer zone size, all animal species vaccination was more than 850,000. This is the worst case scenario. This is the maximum number, but the median number was also not a small amount. It's like 650, more than 650,000 was the median number of vaccine doses required. Even for when vaccination is implemented only in cattle in 3 kilometer, the requirement of the vaccine was around 130,000, and in worst case it was like around 184,000. For the 3 kilometer vaccination all animal species, the median number was around 270,000, and in worst case scenario it was around 600,000. So we can see that cattle only vaccination looks like we need less vaccine dosage, and we also need to call less number of animals, and the disease is going to be epidemic duration is going to be shorter compared to other vaccination strategy. The other important feature of EuFMDiS model is, in addition to this model provides the epidemiological outcomes, it also provides outcomes on the cost or the different kinds of cost associated with or attributable to different control measures we implement in the disease control program. For example, this model provides extensive cost for the surveillance activities, calling activities, disinfection, disposal, control center cost, loss of market cost. So all those costs are estimated using this model. And I didn't have time to present all those costs that we get from this model, but I just estimated the total cost incurred for each of these control strategy we implemented, and this cost is in million euros. So we can see that the total cost was quite significantly lower, or it was cost effective when we vaccinate cattle only in 3-kilometer radius, and it was highly expensive when if each country has different control strategy. You can see as in this box and picture plot. So comparing to the 3-kilometer vaccination all animal species versus 5-kilometer vaccinations all animal species, obviously 5-kilometer vaccination was more expensive, and 3-kilometer was comparatively lower than 5-kilometer. But as you see in this data, cattle only vaccination in 3-kilometer radius was most cost effective. But just to note, this cost doesn't include the cost attributable to trade ban period for 90 days. We didn't include that one in this estimate because that will be same for all strategy if we implement vaccination. So, but just to make clarify, the cost attributable to 90 days period after the control of the disease, the trade ban period, that was not included in this one. So coming to the discussion, so as you saw in this data or the previous slides, despite using a wider vaccination zone, the 5-kilometer vaccination appears to be less effective than 3-kilometer vaccination. And it might be potentially due to when we have bigger vaccination zone, you need to, and if we are planning to vaccinate all animal species, it is potentially we are going to divert our resources from one activities to vaccination and from surveillance to vaccination, and that is going to impact the efficiency of the control measure. So that might be a potential reason when a bigger zone size vaccination may not be effective, or maybe the country-specific vaccination was least effective in this study, partially because even Austria was most affected. We didn't start vaccination in Austria. So that may be one reason that shows the country-specific vaccination was effective. Should we change the scenario, like it may be different, we may have different outcome, but it was for comparison purpose. So we were trying to see how the no vaccination strategy is going to impact on the overall epidemic control and the cost of the epidemic control. Targeting vaccination for cattle only appears to be very effective in controlling the outbreak while reducing the total number of animals killed and reducing the number of vaccine doses required. So it is quite evident that vaccinating only cattle is going to be very cost effective, and also disease control is going to be efficient. But there may be some other ways of performing this target vaccination. For example, the vaccination can be done in particular risk-based areas if the country has identified a region or area where there is those areas are high risk, or maybe the highly dense area. So those risk-based vaccination strategy can also be implemented and assessed their impact using this EuFMDiS model. So in conclusion, EuFMDiS is a powerful tool which enables us to study complex outbreak scenarios involving multiple countries, compare very specific control measures which can set up by country. It can be used to address important issues like resource management, including vaccine requirement under different outbreak settings. And again, I want to reiterate that this study was conducted for demo purpose only, and we cannot really generate meaningful conclusions from this study. Finally, I'd like to thank all of colleagues at our EuFMD team, Dr. Graham Gardner, Dr. Maria De La Fuente, Dr. Poon Mintians, Dr. Tatiana Marshik, Dr. Victoria Todorova, and all of our EuFMD operation team who are working tirelessly behind this scene to making this workshop successful. So I'd like to thank everyone and thank you all for listening this presentation, and I will be happy to take if you have any questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Shankar. Very good, very nice. So please, to you all, if you have any questions, you can directly raise your hand, by clicking on the participants button in the Zoom application, and there's a blue hand, so then you can see that you raised your hand. Otherwise, you can also post your questions on the chat box. So maybe before going to a more structural discussion on the outcomes, there's a few questions, Shankar, and I'll hand them over to you. So first of all, so the figures that you've showed, the different box plots, are these available in the model? And second question is, can this be, does the EuFMDiS be extended to other diseases, but foot-and-mouth disease? So that's more practical questions. Over to you.
Okay, thanks, Kun. So no, this figure was not developed by the model, but figure provides the visualizations, and we can use the screenshots. But to analyze the data, I use the Excel to make those figures. So that was not from the model. The next question about the extension of this model for the other diseases. I think we are already working on to develop the model for CSF. As Kun mentioned in his presentation, we are working on to develop model at the interface of wildlife and domestic pigs for the classical swine fever. So the current model, EuFMD model, we can't use for other, just replacing the parameters. We need to make some changes. So it can be extendable, but we need to work on that. We need to make some changes based on the disease characteristics and spread pathway. So those things may need to be changed, but it could be doable with the help of our model developers and experts.
Thanks, Shankar. There's a question from Martins. Please.
Yes, thank you. So my question is that you use the time frame or the period since the confirmation till the starting of vaccination, 7 days.
Yes.
The question is how realistic it is in EU countries, and so that since the confirmation till all the procedures and then the logistic and starting, so that just in practically probably it's possible to organize the vaccination very fast, but just due to permission and etc. etc. That is one side of the question. And do you try also or model these results if there wouldn't be vaccination at all applied, just to killing or stamping out these? What would be? It's quite interesting. What would be the difference?
Yeah. So very nice question, and yeah, 7 days. It depends on. So the why we choose 7 days. I think it's it was at some point agreement with our collaborators in the pilot study, but it depends on its model provides us feature. We can use 14 days in place of 7 days or 5 days, and we can see how those days changing in days would impact the overall epidemic. So that's the kind of flexible input parameters. But for this purpose, we choose the default value which we had in the model, and this value probably was chosen when the pilot countries were involved in this modeling study. So coming to your next question, yes, we have used the non-vaccination strategy also, but not in this one. But also, if you see our fourth scenario, in which though Austria was highly infected or highly affected, we didn't use vaccination, and you can see the number of infected herds was quite higher in that one. Epidemic duration was quite longer. Expenses were highest in that particular category. Number of animals called looked like low, but that was looking lower. That's due to because that was not vaccinated. So in other category, vaccinated and called them. So that actually hide the impact of no vaccination for the calling purpose only. So in another word, if you compare only the called due to infection, so called due to infection was highest in the scenario 4, which was no vaccination in Austria. So yeah, we also do those kind of scenario, and that was one case in number 4 strategy. number 4 control strategy in this presentation. I hope I made clear.
Thank you.
Okay. There's a question from Lena whether there is a description of the model available for publication.
Yes, we have description of the model. We have manual already, so you can find that manual in our website. If I'm not correct, we have that, and we have some description in our website. We are hopefully we will have our first publication on this EuFMDiS model in near future. It has been tentatively, I would say, accepted. It has not been accepted, but tentatively. So yes, we have some publications, and you can visit our website and you can get additional information there, or you can write us email and we can send you additional information related to this model.
Okay. Maybe let me forward a question that was asked by Advance in our group, but we didn't have the time to answer it. So he was interested in how we could well, demonstrate the resources that were needed in the control. So as an output, is that available?
Would you repeat the question, please?
Repeat the question?
Yeah.
Yeah. So so he was interested in the amount of resources that were needed during the outbreaks.
Yeah, so I think this model provides the opportunity to assess your preparedness and different control options before the outbreak. So in other words, in the peacetime, you will assess your control measures, you will assess how many resources or various teams you may need for different control strategy. During the outbreak, I think theoretically you can do it, but how that will approximate with the real situation, it's difficult to say. But theoretically, yes. But for this model can help you in the preparedness. You can make those preparedness ahead of the outbreak or in peacetime and see whether your preparedness is okay, whether your resources are sufficient to cope the range or different range of epidemic. So I think you need to use this model and assess different the resource availability and see how the epidemic is going to be impacted by those resources. In real time, as I mentioned, theoretically yes, but practically how that's going to impact, I don't want to say anything on that because we don't know how the disease behave in the real situation. So that's a very difficult question to answer on resource requirement in the real situation. Any comments from Kun, Maria, anyone? If you have, you can jump in.
No, I think that was clear. Okay, Gundega, question from you?
Yes, hello. Thank you for your presentations. I have a question. How in this model the end point of the epidemics is calculated?
So in this model, the endpoint is so there are 3 different options. We can terminate the epidemic. So first is you just assign a particular day. For example, you can say, okay, you just assign 100 days, just want to run the model for 100 days. So that's one option. You can just assign like 365 days, like 2 years, like 720 days. So you can do those kind of things depending on your study question. The next option is you can terminate the model when first outbreak is infected herd is detected. And third one is you can end the control when model actually ends the control program. So which means that once the animal is herd is infected, then those herd will be called. If it is vaccinated, like if there is vaccination, for example, suppressive vaccination, also the vaccinated animals will be called, disposed, disinfection, all those activities will be completed, then simulation ends automatically. So the calculation is from detection, like incursion, like the time to detection plus control duration will be the total duration of epidemic in this model.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
More questions? I don't see anything. We're a bit ahead of schedule. we forgot about the coffee break. That's a problem. So I think we can, unless there's something else to be discussed, please raise it now. Otherwise, I think we can come to a close. Maria, and I hand over back to you. Thank you, Shankar, for the presentation and the provided input.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Koen. You're right. I think we were so enthusiastic about the presentations that we completely forgot about the coffee break, but this allows us now to go for the coffee and finish a bit before. So yes, thank you very much to all the presenters for the nice presentations. And thanks, of course, for all the people joining this workshop and all those following live. And I mean, just repeating what Shankar said, but thank you very much to all the operation team that made this possible, to Tiziano, Filippo, Benedetta, Elena, and Ludovica. And before we leave, I think we want to make a group picture. So if everyone can turn the camera on and smile, and then we can finish this nice time together. Cheese. Are we done, Filippo? Okay. So thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed our workshop, and I hope we see each other in some other occasion, some other training or some other, yeah, nice opportunity, possibly not online.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thanks to all. Bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.